Welcome to this deep dive. Today, we're jumping into a really compelling question. Can you actually fundamentally change your life in, say, 6 months?
Yeah, it sounds ambitious, right?
Totally. And we're exploring that through some, well, fascinating source materials, excerpts from a YouTube video transcript by Dan Koe. He lays out this unique philosophy and a routine for making big personal changes.
And our mission here really is to pull apart the core ideas. Look at the practical strategies from this source. We're going to unpack how, maybe surprisingly, small, consistent actions and a structured approach to your work can be this really powerful engine for, well, rapid transformation.
Right.
This deep dive is specifically for you to give you those key insights without you having to sift through everything yourself.
And what's exciting, I think, about this source is that it really challenges some common ideas we have, about time and effort and the whole process of building the life you actually want. Forget waiting for permission or, like, the perfect inspiration. This dives right into the mechanics, how to make it happen. Okay, so let's dig into the first big idea from this source. And it's quite counterintuitive, this concept of bringing your ideal future into the now.
Right. It sounds a bit abstract, maybe.
Yeah, like something you'd stick on a vision board and just hope for. But the source makes it incredibly practical.
And what's powerful here is the argument that you really shouldn't put off the actions that belong to your, well, your ideal future self. The core idea is to figure out those specific actions you see yourself doing in that desired lifestyle.
Okay.
And then start doing them today, right now. Just, at a much smaller scale.
So it's not about waiting until everything lines up perfectly, for the conditions to be just right.
Absolutely not. The source gives this example. If your ideal future involves, say, writing for 2 hours every morning,
Right.
you don't just postpone writing completely until you magically have 2 free hours. You identify the action writing and you start today. Maybe just 5 minutes.
Just 5 minutes.
Yeah. Then maybe next week it's 15 minutes, and then 30. You sort of taper up gradually.
And the logic there seems pretty solid. I mean, if you're not even dedicating 5 or 15 minutes to it now, how are you suddenly going to find 2 hours later?
Exactly.
You have to build up that capacity, that habit anyway.
Precisely. You're building the habit and the skill from day one, whatever the scale. And doing this, it also acts as a kind of built-in feedback system, like a self-correcting compass.
How so? What do you mean?
Well, by starting to actually do the things related to your potential future, even just a 20 bit, you find out pretty quickly what actually resonates with you. And just as importantly, what doesn't. The source talks about someone trying freelancing, then maybe web design. And it was only through the act of doing that they stumbled into writing and realized, oh, this is the path that clicks.
Okay, so you might think you want to be, say, a programmer because it pays well.
Right.
But only by actually trying to code for, like, 15 minutes every day do you realize you absolutely hate it. And that negative signal is just as valuable, maybe more so, than finding something you love.
Exactly. You have to get hands-on. You have to execute the fundamental tasks within that future vision to understand what truly aligns. Your first motivation might be practical, like making money.
Sure.
But the process of tentatively stepping into that future, even for a few minutes a day, it reveals what you don't want. And that clarifies what you do want. And once you find that sweet spot, the source says, you just keep executing. Keep doing it. Make it a larger and larger part of your day until it just feels, well, seamless.
And when you find that thing that clicks, that's when you start discovering deeper reasons for doing it, isn't it? Like that writing example. It wasn't just about getting products in front of people. It was also realizing, hey, this clears my head. This is a powerful form of creative expression for me.
That's what the source calls stacking whys. You find multiple reasons, often more intrinsic ones, for doing the work beyond whatever that initial external goal was.
Right, stacking whys. I like that.
And discovering those deeper whys, it makes the action almost automatic because it's fulfilling you on, multiple levels.
Okay, so you've identified the action, you've started small, you're discovering your path, finding your whys. What fuels this? What keeps it going? The source talks about the power of investing mental energy.
Yes, this is a really powerful concept. When you dedicate focused effort, even just for a few minutes, towards a goal or an action linked to that ideal future, you are, in a very real sense, investing energy. Think of it like a currency. You're investing it into that specific future, that lifestyle.
It's like putting emotional and, well, cognitive skin in the game.
Precisely. And the more you invest this energy, whether it's 15 minutes of focused writing or an hour building some product, the more you feel this sense of obligation to continue.
Right.
You've put something valuable into it, right? And you don't want that investment to just go to waste. This is how momentum builds up. And crucially, the source argues it's how passion is cultivated. It's not just something you find.
So you don't necessarily just wake up one day overflowing with passion for, I don't know, writing code or building a business.
Probably not, no.
You start taking the actions, you invest the energy, you see tiny bits of progress maybe, and the passion actually grows from that investment and that momentum.
That's the idea. You cultivate it through the direct experience, through seeing the return on your mental investment. And if you stop working on that goal, you actually feel the pull of that unrealized investment, that kind of wasted currency. Your mind and body sort of subconsciously nudge you back to it because you don't want to lose that progress, that momentum, that passion you started to cultivate. That's a key mechanism for keeping it going.
This connects really deeply to another fascinating idea in the source material, conceptual survival. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, this concept suggests that our fundamental human drive, to survive, it extends beyond just physical survival. We also work to survive the ideas, the concepts, the beliefs that make up our identity, our sense of self.
Okay, wait. So if you start identifying with that future vision, like the person who writes every day or the person who runs their own business, and you start acting in line with it, investing energy into that future identity.
You're basically building a new concept of yourself.
Right.
And then your survival instinct kicks in to literally try and survive that concept. So your actions naturally line up to protect and reinforce that identity you're building.
Exactly that. The more consistent you are with that focused work, the work related to your ideal future, the more solid that future identity becomes in your own mind. And this is why viewing your daily situations, how you interact online, the conversations you have, the stuff you read, viewing it all through the lens of your future self or your goal, it changes everything.
Because you filter information completely differently. Suddenly, a random social media post you'd normally just scroll past might grab your attention because, hey, there's an insight relevant to your goal.
Right.
Or you listen to a conversation actively looking for those little nuggets that could help you move forward. And the main sort of stark lesson from the source here is this. If you aren't actively working towards your ideal future, you are, by default, working towards someone else's.
Whoa, okay, that hits hard.
It really does. We are inherently goal-oriented creatures. If you don't consciously create your own compelling goal and invest energy in that identity, you will inevitably default to investing your energy in an identity that's been, perhaps, assigned to you.
Like through your job title or societal expectations or just the conventional path.
Exactly. And your actions will then follow to reinforce and survive that imposed belief system, whether you're consciously aware of it or not.
Okay, so how do you actually implement this then? How do you carve out the time and, more importantly, the focus needed to build your own future identity and invest that energy properly? The source proposes a really practical framework for structuring your day.
It does. It's captured by 3 pretty simple actions: fill, empty, and creating. Use your brain. The basic idea is that you need dedicated time daily for, learning, processing, and creating.
Fill, empty, use. I like how simple that sounds.
Right. So the routine suggests filling your brain, maybe typically in the afternoons, by consuming new information, reading books, exploring ideas online, having conversations that spark creativity.
So getting the raw material, the novel resources, the education that fuels that intrinsic motivation and gives you things to actually work with towards your goals.
Yes, exactly. Then emptying your brain, maybe before bed, things like journaling, planning your next day, reviewing ideas, maybe meditation.
Getting all those swirling thoughts and insights and tasks out of your head and onto paper or into some system, that brings clarity, right? So you're not trapped in some chaotic mental loop that stops you from taking focused action the next day.
Precisely. And finally, using your brain, ideally in the mornings. This is your dedicated time for creation, for output, for focused work. This is the primary vessel to apply the ideas you've filled your brain with and the clarity you've gained by emptying it.
This is where the deep work happens, the focused execution that actually builds your future. But the immediate objection everyone has is, I just don't have time for all that.
Yeah, and the source is very direct about this. It's not demanding 4 or 6 or 8 hours a day right off the bat.
Yep.
It's asking for the minimum amount of time you can possibly dedicate. Because if you aren't actively blocking out some time, even just 15 or 30 minutes, and focusing it on moving those key levers toward your ideal future, well, you simply aren't going to create it. It's kind of that straightforward.
You're saying even 1 hour is potentially enough to start making a real difference.
The source is incredibly specific here. and optimistic. It suggests you can drastically change your life in 6 months with just 1 hour a day of focused, intentional work.
Wow.
1 hour applied strategically to one meaningful project day after day after
It's
day.
just 1 hour. Okay, that feels much more achievable for most people. But how do you make sure that 1 hour is the most effective hour it can be?
That's where the priority ladder comes in. The source provides this framework for organizing your tasks into 4 levels of priority, basically moving from absolute deep focus down to more routine maintenance stuff.
Priority 1 being the absolute most important. Yeah.
Exactly. Priority 1 is dedicated to tasks requiring total laser focus on building out your vision through a key project. This is the foundational work, the stuff that genuinely builds your future life. It's typically something new or challenging, not just maintaining what already exists.
So if you only have that single hour a day, that precious hour, it goes straight into priority 1, no question.
Yes, you focus on the levers that will actually create the future vision. For someone just starting out, maybe that's building a social media presence or learning a core skill, the source knows there's often this initial perception threshold where it feels really difficult.
Yeah, that uphill battle feeling.
Right. But consistent effort leads to a breakthrough where it becomes more systemized, easier.
And importantly, once you start seeing results from that first priority 1 project and it does become easier, you don't just stay stuck on it forever in that P1 slot.
No, definitely not. You move it down the ladder.
Yeah.
Once a project becomes more established and less demanding of that pure novel focus, you shift it down to priority 2. And this frees up your precious priority 1 time and energy to start something new, the next high-impact thing.
That makes sense. It keeps the momentum going, keeps the meaningful discovery happening. So priority 2 is for things that are still lever-moving tasks, still important, but they're now maybe more routine, like consistent content creation or engaging on social media once the initial brand structure is built.
Yes, exactly. The sequence is key. Start something new and high leverage in P1, move it to P2 when it's more established, and then immediately start the next high leverage project in P1. It builds these layered systems over time. Priority 3, then, is for continuing momentum on things you're building but maybe don't want to outsource yet, like perhaps writing, tasks that are important but maybe less existentially challenging than P1.
Got it. And priority 4, what lands there?
That's basically for all the maintenance tasks. This is where you put things like checking messages, responding to emails, general admin stuff. Things that need doing, sure, but aren't creatively or foundationally building your future.
This feels critical, pushing all that communication and busy work to the very end. Or at least later in the day.
It really is. The source strongly advises against starting your day with priority 4 tasks. Because exposing yourself to notifications and other people's agendas first thing, it just allows rogue thoughts and external demands to fracture your focus before you've even started the important stuff.
Yeah.
It leads to entropy, essentially. Your mind starts wandering and reacting instead of intentionally creating.
It might feel normal, almost automatic, to grab your phone first thing and check emails or social media, but this perspective suggests that's actually one of the quickest ways to derail your deep work potential for the entire day.
Absolutely.
By pushing those distractions to later, you protect your most valuable focus time for what truly, truly matters in building that future.
Exactly. And these priority blocks, they can be sized flexibly, maybe 45 to 90 minutes depending on your capacity, with breaks built in. But the core message is that this is a framework for intentional experimentation. The joy comes from testing this structure, refining it, finding what allows you to most effectively build that self-made lifestyle you're aiming for.
So if we just quickly recap the journey we took through this deep dive, we started with that foundational idea, didn't we? Bringing your ideal future actions into the present moment, no matter how small they are.
Yeah, starting small.
We saw how that process leads to discovering your true path through trial and error and helps you sort of stack your whys along the way.
Right. And we explored that powerful mechanism of investing mental energy that's the fuel that builds momentum and actually cultivates passion, rather than just waiting for it. And how consistent action aligned with your goals helps build and reinforce your future identity through that idea of conceptual survival, literally changing how you see and interact with the world around you. And then we looked at the practical side, structuring your day with that fill, empty, use framework, making sure you have time for learning, for processing, and crucially, for focused creation. And finally, we broke down the priority ladder as a technique to ensure that focused time is spent on the tasks that are genuinely building your future, not just spinning wheels, maintaining the status quo.
And the truly empowering takeaway from all this, from this source material, is that you really don't need some massive overhaul or endless hours to start creating the life you want.
No.
Focused intentional effort, maybe as little as just 1 hour a day applied strategically through deep work and the SMART priority system, can build incredible momentum. It can create significant change surprisingly quickly, perhaps even transform your life in that 6-month time frame the source talks about.
It really reinforces that passion isn't something you just wait around to find, fully formed. It's something you actively cultivate through consistent action, through investment, and through refining your approach as you go. It's really an ongoing process of experimentation to find your unique rhythm.
Which leaves us all with this final thought to maybe ponder. If the default, like the source says, is working towards someone else's future when you're not actively working towards your own, what is the absolute very first minimum viable action you could take today? Something really small, maybe just 5 minutes, that aligns with the future you actually want. And maybe think about how simply viewing your next interaction or your next decision, no matter how insignificant it seems, through the lens of your future self, how might that change how you approach it?